Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And if it's Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, then it is time for Johnny Apple to join us. For once, he seems awake. I don't know.
No, he's not.
He's not awake. No, that's too much to ask for. So this is our live stream. And
see how excited he is.
Yeah, live stream. Yeah, forget that. I'm barely alive. So there's a lot to get to, and the situation seems to be that the Ukrainians are digging in Kursk. So this is day 7. They're digging trenches, and obviously, Russia's having to figure out how to move them out. Meanwhile, there's some tensions on the border with Belarus that could be quite interesting. I mean, that could be a new front that Ukraine wants to open up and provoke, because it'd be kind of interesting. Because, of course, if it provokes a conflict with Belarus, NATO might say, yeah, but we can take Belarus. We may not want to get into a war with Russia, but we can take Belarus. Now, that puts Russia on the spot, because, of course, Russia has its obligations under the Collective Security Treaty Organization.
And the Union Treaty.
And the Union Treaty, yes. In which case, it would definitely have to move forces to Belarus in order to fight off Ukraine. So that could be something that Zelensky is maybe planning on, staging some provocation with Belarus, maybe even invading Belarus, seizing a piece of territory as he has done in Kursk. So that's one of the unknowns. And of course, there's another unknown, is Moldova, because that's always been a kind of a pot, bubbling away on the back burner.
Well, Transnistria.
Exactly, because of Transnistria. But the problem is that Russia doesn't have a border with Moldova. So if Moldova decides, again, to stage some incident with and attack Transnistria, Russia would have difficulties moving forces to protect Transnistria. So there are all sorts of issues here that could cause Russia serious problems. And so Putin today had a meeting with various Security Council as well as some others. And let me show you just a little bit of what he said. This is the part that's really exciting. We never know whether this is going to work or not.
I didn't want to say anything, but
I know. That's very nice of you. Do you see?
Hoorah! Good work, George.
It's done. Whoa! This is a shock horror. So here's just a brief excerpt from this meeting. So Vladimir Putin held an operational meeting in Novo-Ogaryovo. The meeting was attended by members of the Security Council, the government, representatives of the presidential administration, heads of law enforcement agencies, as well as the heads of the Belgorod, Bryansk, and Kursk regions. And we should say that they started evacuating people from Belgorod. So they've already evacuated about 70,000 from Kursk, and I think they've evacuated some 11,000 from Belgorod. And so here's Putin, who says, before I get down to work and give the floor to the meeting participants, I will add a few more words. It is now becoming clear why the Kiev regime refused our proposals to return to a peaceful settlement plan, as well as the proposals of interested and neutral mediators. Apparently, the enemy, with the help of its Western masters, is carrying out their will, and the West is fighting us with the hands of Ukrainians. So apparently the enemy is striving to improve its negotiating positions in the future. But what kind of negotiations can we talk about with people who indiscriminately strike at civilians, at civilian infrastructure, or try to create threats to nuclear power facilities? What can we even talk about them? So that's a reference to this attack that Russia claims that Ukraine has launched this attack on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. There's certainly smoke billowing from there. And I think that they did stage an attack because the International Atomic Energy Authority clearly has confirmed that there was loud blasts because the Ukrainians are claiming that somehow that the Russians did this, burning tires and so on. So the Ukrainians are claiming it's a false flag, but that's not what the IAEA is saying.
And this is not the first time, everyone.
Okay. Yes, exactly. Second, such actions, of course, pursue the main military goal, namely to stop the advance of our troops, to completely liberate the territories of the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, the territory of Novorossiya. So what? So that's interesting that he only mentions Lugansk and Donetsk, but doesn't mention Kherson and Zaporozhye. Okay. What is happening on the line of combat contact? What are the results? The pace of offensive operations of the Russian armed forces, volunteers, veterans has not only not decreased, but on the contrary, has increased by 1.5 times. Our armed forces are advancing along the entire line of combat contact. And finally, another of the enemy's obvious goals is to sow discord in our society, to intimidate people, to destroy the unity, cohesion of Russian society. That is to strike a blow at the domestic political situation. But here too, there is already a response from the Russian citizens. This is unanimous support for all who have found themselves in trouble, support for the army, and an increase, which is very important, an increase in the number of those wishing to join our men, the fighters who heroically defend Russia with weapons in their hands. The number of those wishing to sign contracts with the Ministry of Defense has increased in recent days. I think that's it. Yeah. So that's, his statement. That's kind of, I thought it was maybe those another. Let me just go back. Okay, and I think there's one more page.
Yep, well, it sounds like, and finally, okay.
Yes, that's right. The leaders of the...
This is the penultimate one, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Oh, this is exciting. The leaders of the Kiev regime not only commit crimes against the Russian people, but in fact have embarked on the path of extermination of the Ukrainians themselves, the Ukrainian people, whom apparently they no longer consider their own. The losses of the Ukrainian armed forces are increasing dramatically for them, including among the most combat-ready units and divisions that the enemy is transferring to our border. The enemy will certainly receive a worthy response, and all the goals facing us will, without a doubt, be achieved. Now, that's
there's one more slide, George.
Is there one more slide? Okay,
he said, and finally.
Yeah, but I think that was the last slide.
Oh, okay, all right.
I think that was the last one. Yeah.
You made the slides. I didn't.
Yeah, I made the slides. As far as I remember, that was the last slide. So that's kind of what you would expect him to say, but you still have the problem, which is that he has to drive the Ukrainians out of Kursk. Now he doesn't want to transfer the forces from Donetsk back to Kursk because that slows down the advance in Donetsk. If he sends in the conscripts from other parts of Russia, then this is basically an untrained, not battle-hardened force, and therefore you will incur severe casualties. They've already incurred severe casualties. That convoy that they sent to Kursk end of last week, that was badly hit, so a lot of people were killed. So that's going to be a serious issue. He has to address that, and we're going to have to see, because this is already day 7, and it doesn't look like they're going to be driven out, within the next few days.
Well, we'll see about that. Okay. I mean, you and I have talked about this before, George. I mean, we're dealing with very scant information. Okay. I mean, how large is the Ukrainian force? How large is the Russian response to it? We get casualty reports, but there's no confirmation of that. Neither side is going to be very transparent about that. And so, I mean, I was asked about this yesterday and today, and I just have a simple response, and I'm sure it's not satisfying to anyone, but this is called war. Okay, this is what happens in war. Okay, and so you get blindsided. Yep, and you pay. You get penalized for doing it. Okay, and then you have to learn from your mistakes. Okay, this is called war. And anyone that thinks that, it's a war is, of this type is always someplace else, is absolutely wrong. Okay. I live with it every day. I mean, the internet here gets all screwed up every once in a while. It's because the authorities are playing around with the frequencies because they don't want us to be droned. Okay. So, yes, this is a war. People die. There is misery. People are displaced. And I'm more appreciative of what you said in the very, very beginning, which I think is more salient, is not if what's going to happen in the next few days, or they get dislodged or not. Well, of course they will be, and there'll be losses, and it's be all unnecessary. But George is right. Moldova, Belarus. This is going back to Victorian Newland. Some nasty little surprises, and I think this is now we're getting some reporting again. How to verify? It's very, very difficult. But apparently, according to the New York Times, if you want to believe them, this was long in planning. And of course, if it's long in planning, then NATO is involved in it. Okay, take it for what it's worth, everyone. Okay, but it does seem to me that this is going, as they like to say, asymmetrical. Okay, if you can't win a conventional war one-on-one, you have to do something else, and this is what they're doing.
Well, yeah, but the point is this. The longer any war goes on, the more the uncertainties arise and the more surprises there are. And that's why, and that has been a real problem right from the beginning of the start of the so-called special military operation, which is it's taking a long time. Now, if it takes a long time, don't assume that your adversary is just going to play along the way you want him to play along. So
I don't think the Russians for 1 second.
What?
I don't think the Russians for 1 second have ever believed that. Western punditry on our side of the line.
But they were obviously caught by surprise by this attack in Kursk. They weren't expecting it. They thought there'll be another kind of offensive somewhere in the Donbass, but that's not what they did. So they did this thing in Kursk. And maybe they're going to start something in Belarus or in Moldova. So they're not going to do what you do. That's why it's always important. Absolutely.
But George,
let me finish.
No, you can be very apocalyptic about it, and that's fine. Okay, but do you really think Ukrainian troops are going to stay in Kursk for very long? Do you think they'll stay very long in Belarus if they try that? I mean, this is that's where you have to be analytical. I mean, sure. It's shock and awe. It's embarrassing. Somebody should be fired. But do you think that Ukrainian troops are going to be camping outside of Minsk anytime soon?
Well, I think that if they dig in, it's going to be a major operation to get them out, and probably the Russians will have to divert forces from the Donbass.
We don't know, George. We don't. This
is well. I mean, look, this is something that this is going to be. It's a big operation. They put a lot of forces in there. They're well dug in. So it's going to be a major operation. It's not going to be just some,
Good.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Send a few guys. So I think I'm not at all sure that sending in some conscripts is going to get the job done. I think they're going to have to divert forces from the Donbass to do it. Of course, the question isn't, well, who's going to win, Russia or Ukraine? That's not the issue here. The issue is if you don't make your strength and resources count, then the war drags on. If the war drags on, there are all sorts of uncertainties.
Well, George, let's do this. Let me play this here. I wasn't going to do this, and I thought about it yesterday. I let it pass. In popular historical memory, we have the Battle of the Bulge. Okay, its proper name is the Battle of the Rural Pocket. How does this apply to this case?
I know how it applies. All right, I know the argument.
Go ahead.
Well, you're saying that this is the last ditch throw of Ukraine, just like the Ardennes offensive.
I didn't say that.
The Ardennes offensive. I think, I'm not at all sure it is the last ditch of Ukraine. I think Ukraine has.
Well, there could be many last ditches.
I think Ukraine has weaponry. I think Ukraine can go on fighting for quite some time. And it's got the Western powers firmly in their corner. They're going to keep doing this because it's in their interest to do so. They're going to keep the war going.
And I have a way.
This event, I think, is going to boost Ukrainian morale. It's going to boost the West. It's going to boost NATO, and they're going to
the West. Yes, there you go. The West. Yes, I agree with you on that. And I have a way of bringing us together. So we differ, and now we're going to go right back in synchronized. NATO. This is a NATO operation, everyone. Let's keep that in mind. And so George and I have been very critical particularly over the last few weeks about this last legs narrative, which I think is absurd. Look what's going on in Kursk. It's not the last leg. Okay, here I'm agreeing with George. This is what's really important, is that Ukraine is in desperate situation, and that maybe account for this operation in Kursk. I tend to agree with that. Okay, but this is a political statement. This is a gesture to the Kiev's donors. Okay, not all is lost. Oh, we might have. Russia's on the verge of collapse. We're going to hear this narrative. We already have. I've been reading it today. Okay, already on the verge of collapse. Okay, what I worry about, and I think George will share my sentiment, is that to starve off eventual defeat, I'm not using last legs here, expand the conflict. That's very dangerous.
Right. No, I think that's right. And I think that's always baked in with any war, which is why, and I said this, we first talked about it in February of 2022, and I said it then, that Russia needs to wrap this up very, very quickly, simply because the longer it goes on, the more uncertainties there are, the more there are all kinds of things are going to happen. Other powers could get in, other fronts are going to be opened up. It's going to be very tricky. And so therefore, just simply, in waiting in this kind of linear way, oh, well, that's it. We'll just wait them out. We'll grind them down and won't be any other fronts open. I don't think that's the right way to think it. I think you need to get it done as quickly as possible.
The discussion everyone here is listening, and I'm really glad everyone is here. This is important, what George and I are doing right now. We're fleshing out an issue that is not clear cut. Right. And this is what is very frustrating for me. I think I can speak for George on this too, that there are certain corners of the internet that just think this, they just, done and dusted, blah. It's not true, okay? This is far more complex, far more difficult than it's being described by people that George and I basically have affinities with, okay? It's important to have these conversations, okay? Because there's a very interesting saying, and I kind of like it because I live here. Russia is never as strong as it seems. It's never as weak as it seems. Okay, you got to play within that Overton window, if you want to use that term. Okay, so that's right. Things have gotten complicated. Okay, mistakes have been made. Okay, this narrative that they're just going to push them to Kiev. I'm going to push them to the Polish border. No, this has been an army. At the advent of the second half of this conflict, it started in 2014. The second stage started in February 2022. That's 8 years of NATOization. Never underestimate that.
Yep. I absolutely agree. I mean, it's 8 years of NATOization. NATO has been absolutely. I mean, it's clear that this operation was planned with NATO. NATO's not even bothering to deny it.
Particularly the White House's comments about it. Yeah, that's a give. That's a
that's right.
That's a gimme. Yeah,
that's right. And it was kind of amusing because when in May, you remember when Biden first said, yeah, you can use American weapons on Russian territory, but so long as it's tied to the Russian aggression to Kharkov. So if you need to use these weapons to attack targets in Russia in order to fend off this Russian attack on Kharkov, yeah, you can do it. And then, of course, it was extended, say, yeah, with any kind of Russian attacks on Ukraine, you can use it on Russian territory to terminate those Russian attacks. Now it's boom, you can just go invade Russia proper, and you can use American weapons. So it was always obvious that once they broke that red line, then obviously, hey, yeah, you can use them.
What we know, Joe, obviously, if we look at it from February 2022 to right now,
right,
this has all been a farce. It's been kabuki theater. We'll play with red lines. We'll invoke it every once in a while. Do whatever you want to do. Okay, we're not going to stop. Have they stopped them? Right. With the one exception, and it's very unclear what happened. I think it was last week where you had the Russian defense minister call Austin and say, we know that some kind of machinations you're going to be involved. You better call it off. We don't know. That's been reported. We don't know what the machination was. Okay. Right. Possibly a false flag. I'm just trying to fill in the blanks right here. Right. But obviously there've never really been any red lines at all. Okay. No. That's the myth and propaganda myth that the West wants you to believe. Oh, we're for restraint. Oh, we're for restraint. No, it's just the opposite. Okay, the deal is you signed up, Ukraine. You volunteered for this. You're going to spill blood. Okay, we're not. Okay, we're going to give you everything you need. We'll have our hands clean. Okay, so go at it. Okay, and that has been the case ever since the start of the special military operation. And don't let anyone else kid you about that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that they've always sort of done this. Well, yeah, but we'll give you this, but that's it. No more than that. All right, well, maybe this, but we'll put strict limits on how you use this, and every time, whatever it was, they always sort of said, "Oh God, all right, if you insist, we'll do it." And then here we are, and now we have German weaponry that is being used in Kursk. So that kind of reminds.
It should.
Yeah.
Yes, German tanks are in Kursk again.
In Kursk, exactly. Exactly. That's so. It's so nice to have a German weaponry, and again, and we had our friend Sergeant Schultz, who said, no, we can't do this. No, we can't. And of course, lo and behold, he let that in. So I'm just trying to, all right. Now I want to look at some of the comments that we have.
It looks like we got a feisty group here. Okay.
Very feisty. All right. Let's first of all, let's look at the Cynthia. Well, thank you, Cynthia. Always very good to see you. So we're going to go back to what we were talking about earlier. Concern about the high levels of immigration into the UK is entirely legitimate, yet it is taboo and cannot be discussed. Yes, that's exactly that's.
Yeah, because you know why? Because in Western political discourse, what is the common denominator? And I'm throwing sand in the eyes of so-called conservatives. Okay, it's all the politics of the vibe. Oh, it's not polite to say that. Oh, you might hurt someone. Well, yeah, you might hurt something as we all go down the drain together. Okay,
right. That's right.
This is politics of the vibe. That's the problem here. Well, you're afraid to say what you think? Oh, and they've won. They've already won the battle. Right. The debate is over because you're afraid. You can't say, hey, there's a whole lot of people coming into my neighborhood. Wasn't that way 5 years ago. Okay. The schools are breaking down. There's no law and order. Did I say anything about, immigrants? I'm just saying demographic change. Is that taboo to talk about?
Well, but that's what has become. And so what happens, and anyway, she goes on. Let me read the whole of her comment. So anybody who expresses such concern is dismissed as far right. Exactly. Weird how that applies to the US as well. Yet it's even weirder to think how that too applies to the entire Russophobic, Zionophiliac West as well. So, what happens is that you dismiss any concern about immigration as far right or racist, and so and therefore the people who complain are then basically drummed out of polite society, and deemed to be completely unacceptable. But when you bring a whole lot of people in, a huge demographic change, you're completely transformed countries. And then they say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because, it'll still be some nominal, it's called Britain or France or whatever. But of course, the country is completely changed. It's not Britain anymore because you've suddenly brought so many people in that vast parts of Britain just no longer are even recognizable as the Britain that people remembered 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay, maybe the time scale is different, but how did the Roman Empire come to an end? Was it militarily defeated? No. Yeah. It just was slowly overrun.
Right.
Until, but in this case, until you could stand in a toga and say, I'm a senator, at the forum, and no one gives a hoot who you are or what you stand for. Right. Because those people didn't come there to become Romans.
Yep. That's right.
They didn't. They don't give a Rome. What the hell? Okay. Right. Hey, nice house here. I'll live here. Okay.
Yep. That's right, and that's really the point that people just come there, they park themselves, and then they get a citizenship. Here's your passport, but they're in no way, the members of the countries, and so they say, okay, well, all you have to do is you subscribe to some vague values. Nobody knows exactly what these values are, and hey, you're British. Or, hey, you're American, even though you're in no way British or American. And so that's what, and they say, this is great, that's fine. And then and therefore the only problem comes from those who complain. So they're the problem, not the fact that you've brought in millions upon millions of unassimilable migrants. And
well, I mean, George, I don't know if they're unassimilable.
Yeah, go
on. It's just unwilling to be. Okay.
Well, of course, you're right. It's unwilling, but it's also a matter of numbers. I mean, once you get a kind of critical mass, I mean, how are you going to assimilate that many people? So,
particularly if they don't want to be assimilated.
Exactly. And of course, the politicians, they're kind of happy with that because. Well, I mean, obviously, there's a kind of the cheap labor aspect of it. Hey, this is labor mobility. But it also plays to it flatters politicians in thinking that, hey, we're for diversity. Hey, we're for inclusiveness. We're for tolerance. We're for multiculturalism. So therefore, we are much better than you because you're primitive. You're racist. You're exclusivist. And so that it gives them this feeling. And I think that it's kind of the last gasp of the sort of the left, which used to have a kind of universalist aspect to it, which is, hey, this is our universalism. We don't believe in any nations anymore. It's basically anyone can just come and go wherever they want and then stay wherever they want. All you have to do is subscribe to some vague values that don't mean anything, like tolerance, and that's it. So it's what's become, when we had Marx's famous workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. So now it was like, oh, great. Well, everyone can just unite and sing, kumbaya, because there are no nations, there are no states. You go wherever you feel like.
Well, what about diversity of wealth? Okay. I mean, they can talk about all these highfalutin values and all that, but what happens when and Great Britain was the epitome of what we understood at one time to be the middle class. They defined during industrialization and post-industrialization what a middle class was. Okay, right. And a middle class, again, you can go down the value path and all that, and there's an argument to it. But the middle class had wealth.
Yes.
And when you have wealth, you have power. Right. And when you have wealth and you have power, you can have a modicum of democracy. Right. But if you don't have any wealth, then you have no power. Right. And then elections turn into this kabuki theater, okay? Where, I mean, Boris Johnson, I don't remember, George, was he conservative or liberal or labor? All of these people. I mean, when you think of these individuals, do you think of an ideological strand? No, I don't. Not for a long time. But Blair kind of wrecked it all in a way.
Yes. Okay. Right. No, I think that's a very good point. I mean, it's what you have this people call it by uniparty, but it means essentially a kind of permanent rule by powerful interests. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, here we are in Britain, with Keir Starmer, busily introducing a police state, and nobody really ever wanted Keir Starmer. And as we talked about it, yesterday, he wants a police state, but the conservatives, they're just a little bit, a bit less officious and less authoritarian than he is. I mean, those people like Liz Truss and the rest of them, they were the ones who were bringing in the Online Safety Act. So you have a permanent ruling class, and nobody really gets a look in. And it's like, if you listen, look at the United States. We'll probably get to that a little later. I mean, a gigantic con job is now being pulled on the public with the Kamala Harris surge. All
right, before we get there, because I do want to talk about that, okay? And I have a lot of criticisms of Trump.
I mean, that's a separate issue from Trump.
I just wanted to say, it's very interesting is that if there is a meaningful, discernible difference between Tories and Labor, is that Tories are more interested in protecting themselves, okay? Because they really don't care about anybody else, okay? Right. But Labor, they want to take care of all of us, okay? Because they know how to do it. Okay?
That's right.
And that's and that's why with this new government, they just pounce on censorship. It's just like, this is such an opportunity. We've been waiting for this. Yeah. Okay, we didn't finish the job with COVID. Now we have our chance.
Yeah, okay? Yeah, exactly.
So like, well, I mean, if you really want to go down, just as long as you leave us alone. That applies to Republicans in the United States. As long as you leave us alone.
Well, that's right, but that's really the ruling. I mean, you got the Online Safety Act, which was pushed by the Tories. Then in Europe, the European Union, you have the Digital Services Act. What do they all have in common? What they have in common is an absolute determination on the part of government to stamp out criticism. So obviously we had that at COVID, all the people who cast doubts on the virus, cast doubts on all the nonsense, the separation, the masks, and the lockdowns and everything else. So that you repress them, but then you can extend it, like you extend it in the United States. Hey, anyone who calls into question the election. So now, let's say in the UK, let's people say, hey, why do you now have to wait for weeks to get an appointment on the National Health? You didn't have to do it. A few years back, you didn't have to wait weeks to get an appointment. Well, because it's overburdened. You've now brought in so many new people into the country that you basically completely.
But George, you missed the point, George.
Health service unworkable.
You missed the point, George. You have to help Ukraine.
You have to. Yeah, well, that's another aspect of it. Exactly. We have to. Exactly.
Suck it up, okay?
That's right. And we're going to help Ukraine.
Suck it up, okay? That's right. That's what they do. They just say, well, we're working on it. We have a goal. We have a offer. Everything is in the future, But right now, We have to take care of Ukraine. That's our imperative.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. That, you know, that was Keir Starmer peacefully taking office on July the 4th, and or July the 5th, and then he was already thinking, yeah, I'm going to devote my premiership to Ukraine, because that's really the only thing. You know, he was chatting with Joe Biden on the phone, chatting with Stoltenberg. These are the issues that the only issues that really matter. And now he's been whacked over the head, and he's going to vent his fury at the scum that has called into question his wisdom. Anyway,
and what both parts of this political spectrum, more so in the UK and the European Union, least we forget, everyone, you know, policies of very serious and stringent austerity have been in effect since 2008. They have to keep legitimizing it. So what they want you to do, this is what they want you to do. They want you to go to the polls to ratify and legitimize their immigration policy. They want you to go to the polls and legitimize and rationalize austerity. See, they want you to genuflect in front of policies that hurt you, don't hurt them. Okay, that's what they need. They're not interested in the democratic will. That is something that is a distant past. Okay,
well,
elections one purpose is to legitimize the status quo.
Right, I think it's right, but it's very interesting because, of course, these riots or protests took place in some of the most deprived parts of the United Kingdom. You know, these are some of the poorest parts of the country. But look how the government responded. They responded, you know, these people are scum. They should be imprisoned. Now, supposing it were, you know, minorities who were rioting in these deprived communities, by the editorial pages on the media was, oh, you know, we have neglected the minorities. You know, this is, of course, this is what they were bound to do. You know, this is what comes of years and years of deprivation, years and years of racism or whatever. There would be huge sympathy for them. I remember the Black Lives Matter. There was a lot more violence there in Britain. I'm just talking about Britain. There was not as much violence as in the US, but there was.
Why in Britain?
And there was sympathy extended towards the rioters. No sympathy at all for when it comes to the white majority of the UK. They're just scum. Throw them in prison. None at all. Hey, but what about their deprived neighborhoods? I don't care about their deprived. Shove them in prison. So it's amazing who gets sympathy from the authorities and who doesn't.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so here we have Cynthia says, speaking of which, thank you so much as always, Cynthia, for your generosity. Speaking of which, why do you think the mudslinging Dems specifically chose the word weird to sling mud at JD Vance?
We did a video on this, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Could it just be their way of painting him as some kind of a pre-woke era throwback to the long gone days of a much whiter America? Are they simply trying to muddy up his image by portraying him as a long-lost, dirty white guy who's way out of step with the wokishly sanitized world of today? Okay,
well, I mean, we can take the race element out of it. It's more about real values, okay, and a public good. Okay, I mean, we did a video on it. I mean, I think George and I came to a rough consensus is that they want to call JD Vance weird because he talks about childless middle-aged women with cats, which I think is quite appropriate. I'm not walking away from it. It's one of the best lines he's ever delivered, and I stand with him on that. Okay, but you know what isn't it weird that the Biden administration has a male with the rank of admiral wearing a dress? No, that's weird.
That isn't weird, yeah.
Or this guy that was involved with nuclear waste and all that. I mean, that's
that's
head, you know, makeup, and he steals other women's clothes at airport. That's weird. Okay. So I find the whole weird conversation to be very weird.
It is very weird, and I think the aspect of it that he somehow is a throwback to a kind of America that that the wokish left detests. I think that's a part of it. But then the interesting is that, is it also the foreign policy? I mean, that's an important part of it. The foreign policy. He is saying, particularly on Ukraine. Ukraine's the big one. Because whatever he may say about Israel, I mean, that's just pro forma. You can't be in American politics and not be slavishly pro-Israel. I mean, that's just a given. But he has been very critical about Ukraine, and I think it's a part of this attack on him for his criticism of Ukraine. I remember what did they say about Tulsi Gabbard? I mean, they didn't call her weird, but they might have done, because but that's only because she sort of faded from the political scene. But they called her a Russian agent. She was openly called a Russian agent, a Putin bot. And if she were a serious kind of political contender, they would be bringing up all sorts of stuff about her Hinduism and all this. They would say, yeah, she is weird. So I think that there is the foreign policy aspect of it, which is also contributing to, you have to smear him somehow. Oh, we'll smear him with this word weird.
Yeah, and one of the other words, and this is a real bugaboo. George and I have talked about this in the past. He's isolationist. Okay, I mean that is such a misnomer. Okay, but the left and neoconservatives, they love to play with that. Okay, that's their favorite bugaboo. Okay, he's an isolationist. Okay, well, I think the United States should have more of a realist foreign policy. If you want to call that isolationism, fine, go ahead. I don't care. I don't dance to the tune of your words. Right. Then that's something all of you should do. Don't I know. When someone says that's isolationist, well, maybe it's isolationist to you. I see it differently. I'm not going to let you cower my lexicon. I use words forcefully and with purpose. Okay, right. And I'm not going to let you hijack them.
Right. No.
Right wing.
That's right. Exactly. The far right. But I want to say something now about this whole thing with Waltz and the stolen valor, because I think that there is an argument here. I think that there is a point here that and Vance has made, because Vance hasn't called into question Waltz's service. I mean, again, he served 24 years in the National Guard. And it's still the National Guard. I mean, no one thought highly of the National Guard when George W. Bush and Dan Quayle said, "Hey, I served in the National Guard in lieu of actually going to Vietnam." But the problem with Waltz, somebody who goes around calling people weird, the problem with Waltz is the stolen valor. He did suggest, in a number of different ways, in a number of different occasions, that he saw combat. And I think that is a problem. You can say, yeah, I served in the National Guard. That's different from suggesting that you were in combat. When he said, these are weapons of war that I carried in war, that is stolen valor. When he says,
but George, sorry.
When he said Operation Enduring Freedom veteran, which is what he said, he was an Operation Enduring Freedom veteran, then again, that's false, because he didn't serve in Operation Enduring Freedom. So that is stolen valor. Yeah, anyway, go on.
I don't think it's going to change one vote.
I think that's a different issue, that it's not going to change one vote. I think that's an important
point. He's a fraud. Kamala Harris.
It's a fraud. I mean, it's fraud.
We already know that. Okay.
No, but it is fraud, and I think that's important to point out. How people vote. I mean, look, people don't vote for vice president. They vote for the president. However, if you're going to pursue this strategy of putting yourself on this kind of morally elevated plane, as Harris and Waltz are doing, then that is an issue. And incidentally, the media are realizing that that's an issue. That's why they're already running cover for Waltz, because they know that this is an issue. This is a problem for them.
I don't think it's. I think in a news cycle, a couple of news cycles, yeah, and then they move on to something else. Like, yeah, he got caught. He got caught. Okay, what are the consequences for it? Not much. Not much.
Well, no. Well, yeah. Look, as I say, I don't think it's the vice president thing is an issue, but Waltz has been presented as a kind of a real regular patriotic guy, a real American. It's not a good look. It's not a good look.
I mean, I think all you need
yourself as something that you're not.
Okay. The fact that as governor, he put tampons in the men's room. I think, that's all you need to know.
That's another thing. Yeah.
For me, that's all you need to know. But, a stolen valor, it's a cheap trick that it's been played over and over and over again. I'm much less concerned about stolen valor than, foreign, useless and expensive foreign policy capers around the world.
Yeah, but it's part of the package. If he was, had stolen valor and said, we got to forget about, worrying about Ukraine. We got to attend to our own domestic problems. Then that would be fine. You say, yeah, okay, I'm much more interested in that.
Okay, but George, the
stolen valor aspect, and he's one who wants to expand the war in Ukraine.
In principle, George, I absolutely agree with you. I'm trying to find a way to think about it in a different way. Is that okay? Waltz is up against J.D. Vance. That's what matters. Okay. None of this other stuff, marriedless women with cats, it doesn't matter. Stolen valor, it doesn't matter. And all of it boils down to one thing. Harris, Waltz are running against Trump. That's all that matters. Everything else is just little layers and, details. This is what it's all about. Stolen valor, yeah, but he's running against J.D. Vance. That's how people will think about it, too. Okay.
Right. Well, okay, but this fight between him and J.D. Vance was started by Waltz. Waltz started the whole weird thing. Now, it's not a good look if you start this accusing your direct adversary of weirdness, where Vance was a Marine. Now, he wasn't in a combat role, but Vance never claimed that he was in combat.
Very transparent.
And then you're the one who actually claimed that you saw combat, and you didn't. I think that's a big deal.
But I don't think it's going to change one vote.
Whether that's going to affect any vote or not, that's a different issue. I don't know how.
No, but that is the issue.
But it's a big deal.
It is the issue. Will it change one vote?
I don't know. Who knows? Nobody knows how these things, how people vote, what really goes on in their minds. It's a complicated process. And I don't know whether it will affect. You may be right. It's not going to change one vote, but this issue, I think, is a big deal.
For me, it just fills in the hours on cable TV. I'm sorry. I just don't take it very seriously. Is the guy a liar? Yep. Well, I have low expectations of these people. Right. I really do.
Right. Right. Okay. And now the thing is that you see, you have Harris and Waltz who are basically running a campaign of concealing themselves as much as possible from any kind of inspection. So this is one of the few things that we actually know about them.
Yeah, and they're doing a good job of it.
So therefore, that's all we can work with, because that's what we have. I mean, it's like, well, Waltz, who was, he was brought up by Harris. This was Harris's first decision, and this is an absolute fiasco. And why it's also important is that this issue had come up before in past years. Veterans had challenged him. He had continued to lie about it, and still Harris went with this guy whom veterans have already pointed out.
On that point, George, on that point, I think you you're prescient. That is an excellent point. Her first executive decision was to choose this guy. That's all you need to know about her, okay, in a way, all right? But again, I'm not sure it's here nor there at this point. I mean, we have to look at Harris waltz in toto, and that is the campaign against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is not doing well. Not doing well.
No, again, but that's a separate issue.
I mean, but none of them
Trump, we can
exist
talk
in a
about
vacuum.
Trump, but
They don't exist in a vacuum, George. It's all part of the same thing.
No, but they are separate issues. I mean, we can talk about, absolutely, let's talk about Trump, but the issue is still, what do we know about Harris and Waltz? Well, one of the few things we know about Harris and Waltz is that Waltz is a habitual liar, and has basically padded his military prowess, and it was this that that Harris promoted as something. Well, this is my vice president, as somebody who is a habitual liar.
George, they elected Barack Obama twice, and we knew nothing about him, and we still don't know much about him.
We still don't know much about him. No. Again, since we know that the strategy is going to be to keep them as hidden as much as possible from journalists, from news conferences, so on. I mean, they're asking about Harris. Well, are you going to sit down with an interview? Just an interview with a journalist. They said, yeah, maybe sometime towards the end of the month. Just basically run out the clock.
That's right.
And so that's just in a way. Well, what do we know about them? Well, that's one of the few things we know. I mean, in the case of Obama, you're even less. But we did know things about Obama, and that was deliberately downgraded by the media. I mean, we knew something about Jeremiah Wright and those issues, but the media deliberately didn't want to address any of them. But here, this, one of the few things we have to go on is a habitual, that he's a habitual liar about every aspect of his military service.
But does it matter, George?
I don't know.
Hang on.
Whether it'll change any votes, I don't know, because
Hang on.
Who knows how these votes go? But I think that it does matter.
It depends what you mean by matter. Anyway, that was my best Bill Clinton impersonation.
Yes, all right.
But I mean, when there was the White House coup and they finally stabbed Joe in the back. Mm-hmm. You and I were doing it in real time, and I said this is going to be the biggest, most elaborate rollout of a non-entity in American political history, and it's on track. Everyone, it's on track. I mean, Kamala Harris will probably not even do a friendly interview because she'll screw that up too.
Oh okay? Yeah, I think
she'll
so.
Screw that up too.
No, I think so, and I think that she won't do that. I think that there'll just be this one debate on ABC. There won't be any other debates. She won't do any news conferences. It'll be just a series of kind of hail the conquering hero comes, rallies, she'll be waving to the crowds, and then there'll be CNN and MSNBC talking about how fantastic she is and the excitement and so on. That's going to be the strategy.
And you know what her line is going to be? The line that she pulled against Joe Biden, and I was that little girl. It's going to come up again and again and again. And Trump, she's as dumb as a rock. Okay, yep. I was bullied as a child. Okay, of course she wasn't, but I was bullied, just like this guy here. See, just play right into it, and her media acolytes will just amplify. Okay, we know nothing about this person other than her cackle, and as far as the establishment is concerned, that's all that matters. It's better to have a cackler than Donald Trump. It never changes.
Right. No, I think that's exactly what it'll be, and I think they can just cruise.
And she can win.
They might well be able to pull it off. Yeah, they might well be able to pull it off.
Trump is his campaign appearances. He's on a grievance tour. I just really found it astounding. I really do. Okay, all he needs to do is run against the Biden administration, not against Kamala Harris. Forget her. Okay, she's a stand-in. She's an actress. Okay, go against 4 years of policy, and there's so much material. Yeah. There's a huge amount of material, but he won't do it. He won't.
Right. Right, right. No, I think that's probably that's the only thing he can do. He can't do much against her. Now,
Well, he shouldn't do any. Why? Why elevate her? Why
well,
he's
the problem you
elevating
have
her?
is that I mean, he has a problem, and is that he can attack the Biden administration, but of course, then the comeback will be, yeah, but that was Biden. This is a new candidate. She was just the vice president. That was him. That's he's a new. That's a new person, and I think that's it's causing the frustration, which is that he's running against Harris. He's not running against Biden, and she can distance herself from Biden while at the same time embracing those aspects of Biden that the Democrats like. I mean, that's what's actually causing some problems for him.
Right before Biden was stabbed in the back, I don't remember which polling agency it was, but it was interesting. Trump against Biden, Trump was winning. Trump against a generic younger Democrat, that younger generic Democrat was beating Trump. And that's what they're doing. She's generic. That's why she doesn't come out with, next week she comes out with her economic plan. It'll be a whitewash. Okay. Right. More jobs. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. They're going to play on this generic. Okay.
Yeah.
And
no,
let Trump go. She's as dumb as a box of rocks. Okay. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. That only plays to his base. No one else.
Right. Yeah. No. But having said that, the attack on Trump is exactly the same. I mean, it's all just he's a dictator, he's a fascist, and
he should run on his record, and he should criticize the Biden record.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I think that the kind of personal attacks against her don't do anything. But the fact is, however, the Democrats have been very cunning in what they did.
Oh yeah,
because what they essentially did is, well, it's known as cheating, and it is cheating. I mean, they had a primary process in which they made sure that nobody actually got into the race because, hey, it's the incumbent and nobody challenges the incumbent. So they managed to push aside or any possible challengers. Then, once he has secured the nomination, they decided, okay, now we can push him out of the way and replace him with someone else. And so it is just like you've cheated. You've been playing one game, and then suddenly, we're going to replace you with someone else. And I think probably Trump should have anticipated that this was the stunt that they were going to pull, but the Democrats pulled this stunt. They were always pulling stunt. In a sense, this will be the third consecutive nomination process in which the party just cheated. I mean,
well, I mean, they cheated.
They basically cheated to get the nominee that they wanted.
Let's be clear who they cheated. They cheated their own constituents. Okay, yeah. They cheated their own voters. Okay. I mean, George, I said from the get-go, the DNC is going to do whatever it wants. It has the rules. I think Walz was on the rules committee. What rules? Okay.
Well, except that there weren't any rules.
It's a donor world, and you're not
right.
Part
but
of let me just give an example here. This criticism. She's a cackler. Okay, that's true. But what does she cackle about? See, if you're going to use the cackle thing, then put some meat on those bones. She cackles over putting what was it, the truancy law that she had, punishing the parents of children that don't go. Okay, or the labor, the prison labor issue. She cackles about that. Okay, if you're going to go after the cackle, then explain why the cackle is weird, okay, to use their own word. What I'm just saying, George, you can be much more nuanced, okay? And Trump, he is an aggrieved person. I mean, no American politician has been attacked by the state by the establishment, by the justice system, like he has been. He certainly is single. I mean, nobody even compares. I mean, not even close to Nixon, if you think about it. Okay, but don't play into that. Okay, don't. You can't have, the safe places and victims and no, you can't change that and say, but I'm that now. No, it doesn't work. And you disappoint people. Okay. It disappoints me. Okay. Going after Harris, it's almost an embarrassing exercise, I think, because you're bigger than that. And since you're bigger than that, do bigger things.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know. Look, I mean, no question. I think he has to present a program, a platform. I think that Harris is, ultimately, I think that the issue is going to be whether she can continue being protected from any.
The answer is yes.
Scrutiny. If there's no scrutiny, can she essentially glide to victory? And I don't know. I don't know whether that can really work because at the same time there will come a point at which people will want to know whether, hey, what is she saying? I mean, this is all very well saying, enthusiasm, but enthusiasm among whom?
But George, why would they have?
Among their own party, but there's, not in the country. So therefore, the question is, you got to. I agree. You got to basically say, what is it that the Democrats intend to do? What is the Democratic Party agenda? And say, well, this is what we don't want.
Why would there be the question of who is she really? What does she really think? This is the John Fetterman phenomenon. I keep going back to it. She's blue. Okay, that's good enough for me. That's what we get. This is the level of discourse and intellectual thought of the electorate. Okay, it's a binary. And
right.
And you and I have talked about this for ages. It's that 3 to 5% in a fair election, and I say that for a good reason, that you have to appeal to. Okay, and then plus the machinations. Everybody, the election laws and changes that were for COVID, they're still in play.
They're still in place. No, I think I think that's the key. That's going to be the key in this election. And in all of those battleground states, there's still all of those issues are still there. And so, but it is a kind of an interesting issue because, of course, if the Americans get Harris, then in a way everything that's going to happen in the next 4 years will be, hey, this is your appropriate punishment. And I think I think people are going to be punished for very severely for allowing Harris to come to power.
Well, George, I mean, again, for people in power, and I'm not even talking about political affiliation per se, she's like the greatest candidate you could ever hope for. She'll do whatever she's told to do. I mean, she can read a teleprompter. She can. Okay. That is all she needs to be able to do. All right. That's all she needs to be able to do. And then she'll have her people explain what she means, what the president really meant. This is perfect. Okay. It goes back to issues that you and I talk about most of the time. She's the perfect establishment foreign policy president they could ever hope for. Because Joe Biden fancied himself as some kind of foreign policy guru. Well, he knew a lot about foreign policy. He was just on the wrong side of just about every single issue in his entire career. I mean, he does know where the Golan Heights is. I think, well, maybe he's forgotten by now, but he did it one time. Okay, do you think Kamala Harris has any clue where the Golan Heights is? I put money on it that she doesn't.
No, I agree there. I agree there. Anyway, Steve K9 says, don't conscripts have a year of training? They don't have combat experience, but they are not simply pulled off the street, or am I wrong? I think
not in Russia. Not in Russia.
Right, but the Russian government hasn't sent in conscripts into Ukraine, so the conscripts are based in Russia, and so they don't have combat experience, and so therefore that's a real problem, because if you have, you know, the people who have entered Kursk, I mean, apparently they have combat experience. So you're sending in people who have no combat experience against people who have combat experience. The people who don't have any are likely to suffer severe casualties. So I think that's the problem with using conscripts, that basically you're throwing people in who haven't been in battle, and that means they're going to be making lots of mistakes, and when you make mistakes in battle, you get killed. I think that's the problem here.
Well, at the end of the day, you know, we already went through this. A lot of people are going to be killed. Okay, but the result is the same. The outcome is the same. Okay.
Well,
if anybody in their right mind thinks that in a month's time that the Ukrainian troops are going to be still occupying parts of Kursk, then you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, we're going to have to see. I mean, we can't just simply, you know, go for these predictions.
Remember this moment, everybody. Okay.
I'm not saying that they will be, but I'm saying that, you know, we'll have to see. I mean, this prediction game seems kind of fairly pointless. We'll see. I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, this is.
But George is right on a fundamental point, and I'm in agreement with him on this point. Somebody screwed up. Somebody didn't see this coming. This is what you're paid to do, okay? Particularly the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation, you know, which we were told another war will never be fought on this soil. We were told that, okay? So this is a fiasco of a huge dimension. A lot of lives are going to be lost, and it's not going to change the course of the conflict whatsoever. Okay, I've already given my point.
Like, we don't know what the course of the conflict is. I mean, when the conflict is going
George,
on,
you and I are going on.
I mean, when it's over, when the war is over, then we can talk about the course of the conflict. It's ongoing.
Ukraine can win. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say that. I'm saying that the war. No. I said that the war could go on for a very, very, very long time, and all sorts of unknown factors that play into it.
We're not disagreeing on that.
No. All right. Anyway, Dan Rock, thank you so much from the United Arab Republic. I really appreciate it. And then Dan Rock is how long before Belarus is dragged in? Well, that's an interesting one.
That's the question. That's a good question.
Yeah, and it could well be that that Ukraine is going to try and drag Belarus in, and that's going to cause serious problems. And I think that for some reason NATO said that's a kind of a red line for NATO if Belarus gets involved. I don't know why they said it, but they said it's going to be a red line. So I can quite see that that's something that could happen. We got to watch that, because then that's a serious escalation of the war.
But you have to realize, and again, if you pay close attention, the integration of the Russian and Belarusian military has been quite intense over the last few years. Okay, so in military terms, that is the same as attacking Russia. It's the same thing. Okay, I mean, all due respect to Lukashenko and everything.
Right. No, I think it is. But again, it's an additional headache for Russia. That's
additional headache. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's right. So then, all right. And then Steve K9 says, here is a scenario to involve NATO among many. Send in Polish special forces. The goal is to have them killed. The Poles may not want to fight Russia, but after your men are being killed, logic tends to go out of the window. Yeah, I mean, I think that there was always the danger that Poland is going to try and get involved. The question I think for NATO is that NATO is quite happy with just keeping this going, keeping the pot bubbling, without getting directly involved, so they can send their arms, they can send their money, and then, but when push comes to shove, they can still say, hey, we're not a party to this conflict. If the Poles get in, and then it's going to be hard for NATO to get itself out. I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen, but that's really the problem, whether
give it a
NATO
try.
is really willing to get itself directly involved.
Give it a try. Give it a try. Okay.
Yeah.
That is lunacy. Okay. There's an observation about myself. I think I have. I should respond to it. Peter is not a U.S. citizen. Yes, I am a U.S. citizen. It took Peter 25 years to become a Russian citizen. Yes, I am a Russian citizen as well. I guess Peter was conflicted. No, I'm not conflicted at all. I would love to move to Russia. Come to Russia. It's a nice place to live.
Okay. So Steve Kenan says, you can talk about what is happening, immigration, if it is not obvious, but the real question is why? Why do elites want to destroy the nation state? There are some obvious answers, which I won't give, but that is the real question. Well, I think, I mean, again, I think there are many explanations. I mean, one of it is obviously the nation state is one that is, able to resist powerful transnational forces. I mean, that's historically been the case, that a nation state is able to do this. Once you start bringing in migrants, then the nation state disappears, and what you get are warring tribes. I mean, a small country just ceases to be any kind of a nation, identified by common language, common culture, common history. It just becomes warring tribes. And basically, it's not really able to unite on anything. So I think politicians really like that. It's a kind of a divide and rule. And it enables them to feel very, very on a morally lofty plane that they are on the side of diversity and inclusiveness and liberalism and so on, even though the people that you're bringing in are anything but liberal. I mean, once you start bringing in many Muslims into a country, these are people with very, very different values. I mean, so it's like you're all for your liberal values, but here are people where women are wearing burqas. But that's part of your tolerance. Hey, well, okay, if you want to wear a burqa, you wear a burqa. So it's a kind of a strange thing that you're embracing this universality, but at the same time you're bringing in people who are definitely do not subscribe to your ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusiveness.
Before I address that here, how can I have both citizenships? There's a law on dual citizenship here, so I'm legal. Okay, so to address George's point, absolutely. I mean, what the trend is here, I mean, we tend to talk about politics as if it's kind of a real thing, and we can actually argue about it, and it's more of a parlor game. But for a lot of these elites, the nation state gets in the way of technocratic rules. See, we could have these arcane traditions and all of that. Okay, well, that's all nice, but we need to have kind of a universalized technocratic approach to the body politic.
Right.
And what that does is that dissolves politics. They don't want politics, okay? Right. They want to have a set of rules of how a society is governed. And having a national longing for a place, a geographical place, that's alien to them. That's like backwards, okay? When we need to have these lofty ideas where we can solve all of the problems, okay? And actually your input is kind of a barrier for us to solve problems. Okay, so that, it's not necessarily an attempt to destroy the nation state. It's just, for them, it's an annoyance, and it will wither away, and all of this type of thing. It's something they certainly don't want to defend. Every once in a while they'll invoke, British values and all that. I don't believe them when they say that. Okay, but it's just professional managerial class, and that is universalized in the West. Okay, Annalena Baerbock can identify with Radek Sikorski and Anthony Blinken. They understand each other. They have the same ethos. Okay, and they're actually quite proud that a German and a Pole and American can be on the same wavelength. That justifies their point of view. That we all are the same when we think in this way. And this is this groupthink and elite capture that George and I have talked about since the inception of this podcast.
Well, I mean, an example is from history. Let's say when the Bolsheviks took over the Russian Empire, and what did they do? I mean, they realized that the real problem that they faced was from Russian nationalism. And how did they address the problem? They addressed the problem by essentially cultivating every single nationalism in the book, even inventing nations out of whole cloth in order to downgrade the nationalism of the main group within.
They promoted Ukrainian nationalism.
Yeah, exactly. Ukrainian nationalism everywhere, and even and within Russia, they broke it up. We'll have this Tatars and all these others, and something like that is happening in many in European states. So if you start bringing in, Annalena Baerbock looks at Germans and she just finds them disgusting. They're loathsome. So what do you do about that? Well, you bring in lots of people from elsewhere, and suddenly what was once a kind of a German national identity, something that we found distinctively German, that's gone. Suddenly, hey, look, this is cool. We got some Muslims here. Oh, look, we got some Kenyans here. We got Nigerians here, and suddenly you don't have anything that's distinctly German. I mean, this is already happening in Scandinavia. You once had something called Sweden, and we knew what Swedes were. That's those kind of blonde, good-looking people. Very athletic, and and so on. That's gone. Because the people who ran Sweden said, hey, we need to stop being so blonde and good-looking and athletic. We need to bring in people from the rest of the world. And suddenly, lo and behold, it becomes a very, very different country, with high crime rate. And when you have high crime rate, then of course you have more government, and then you pit one group against another, and it allows politicians to rule over their minions.
But George said something very shortly, but I think it's a very important point, is that bringing in mass migration from the Middle East, North Africa, and whatnot. You're not making Germans, okay? Because first of all, like Annalena Baerbock, she has disdain for Germans, okay? But she doesn't want the immigrants to become Germans either.
No,
okay? But the problem, there's a fly in the ointment here. That, again, this is politically incorrect, and you get in a lot of trouble for saying it. But particularly if we look at the Muslim migration to Europe, which of course, NATO encourages that by destroying their countries. Okay, why are there so many Syrians outside of Syria? NATO. Okay, the United States. Okay, why are so many Afghans not in their country? Iraqis. We can go on and on and on. Okay, a Western foreign policy directed by the United States creates these migrants. Okay, and so, but it's been estimated that maybe by 2050, 2070, Germany will be a Muslim majority country, okay? And that has implications, okay? Because it's certainly not going to be German. Okay? No. It's going to be a different country, okay?
Right.
And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying objectively.
Well, I think it is bad. I mean, I think it is.
No, what I'm just saying is that if you put all of these things together, you're going to get something different. Okay, right. Is that you will have achieved destroying a sense of Germanism? That's for sure. Okay,
that's right. I think it is very bad because you did have something called Germany that contributed enormously to, with world culture. Almost every field of human endeavor had been transformed by the Germans. And suddenly, you've made this into a land inhabited by all kinds of different tribes. And look, I mean, it was always the case that Europe was going to be very vulnerable to mass immigration. I mean, there aren't that many Europeans, to be honest. I mean, relative to the rest of the world. So Europeans always had to be very vigilant about, preserving their.
George, isn't it interesting? Isn't it really interesting? We can use the benchmark of the French Revolution for the sake of this argument. Is that if you look at from 1789, let's say up to 1980, whatever, okay, the amount of effort that elites in what countries that we call France, Germany, Italy, the amount of effort to create an Italian, to create a German, to create a Frenchman. I mean, that was real nation building, okay? I mean, this is something, conscription, Napoleon's famous conscription, we have to make Frenchmen, okay? They're not from Normandy, they're not, from Bordeaux, we have to convince them they're French, okay?
Right.
Now, you might think this sounds strange, but it's actually really true. If you look at the nation building of Italy, and then the hardest one was actually Germany in many ways, okay? Because you had all of these little mini states between France and then the Russian Empire. Poland disappears through history, and there was a real effort. Bismarck was brilliant about building what we understand is a modern Germany. The reason why I'm bringing that up is that all of that hard work is being dismantled very, very quickly.
That's it. Well, it is very quick because, again, if you think of Germany, its population is only 80 million. That's not very much. You start bringing in, 1 million or 2 every year, it suddenly becomes very a different country very, very quickly. Now, the people like Annalena Baerbock and Sergeant Schultz, they kind of despise Germanness anyway. They don't like it at all. They everything that they regard as German, they kind of despise, and they think this is really cool, making it a cosmopolitan place, a kind of a melting pot. Of course, it isn't a melting pot, but a kind of a marketplace. We have Hindus and we have Muslims and Sikhs, and this is fantastic. And then we have Africans. They think this is really great. But it ceases to be what it once was, and I think this could be very, very quick. And I think you have ruling elites who I think would like to see it transformed very, very quickly. I mean, we know this in Britain. The Blair, Starmer, and others, they want to see Britain transformed. And then when people protest and they say we don't want this, then you throw the dogs and the police at them, and you're doing this in Germany as well. We've talked many times about the alternative for Deutschland. Yeah, we're going to turn the dogs on you, and then we're going to throw you in prison. So it's being done deliberately by elites who really kind of don't like their countries. They don't really like their civilizations very much.
I have to address a comment. Okay. My dual citizenship. I've lived here for 25 years. I've been paying taxes. Getting citizenship gives me the privileges of any other citizen here. So making the Israeli analogy is really a non-starter, okay? I mean, being able to buy real estate, for example, okay? And other social services, you have to be a citizen. Okay, I pay taxes. I mean, I think a very American attitude towards it. Taxation, no taxation without representation. Now I have representation. It's very, it's a lot more base than some people in the chat are making it out to be. Anyway, I ditto everything George just said. Right.
And so Steve then talks about this essay, The Diversity Myth, from May 1995 in the Atlantic. That was the Atlantic before Steve Jobs' widow took it over, before Jeffrey Goldberg. And I remember reading that essay at the time. So I'm going back about 30 years when I read it, and what I think Schwartz was saying in that essay was that the American ethos was, migrants come in and they are forced to assimilate. They were absolutely boom. They went through the education system and they were very quickly disabused of their own, languages and everything that they brought from the old country in order to create Americans. And that's why, basically you got a second generation American, and he didn't speak at all the language of his parents. That's it. The Italians, they didn't even speak any Italian.
I knew many Poles the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what I think Schwartz was saying in that essay is that, well, that actually was very successful because you actually created something called an Americans. The people who were, even the Poles, Germans, Italians, they all were Americans. Everything, their history in the old continent that was now forgotten, but that in this diversity of today, that people are retaining their differences, and therefore it becomes very difficult to maintain an American ethos. So people grow up to be American, and I think that goes together with the America. It's supposedly a nation of immigrants, but for 40 years, basically, it didn't let in anybody. From the early 1920s through to 1965 Immigration Act, it let in nobody because they said we need time to absorb all of those migrants.
And they did. And they did.
And that's right.
Look, one of the most amazing things, I mean, when we talk about the Great Generation and, Saving Private Ryan and the Band of Brothers and all of that, which are all good stuff. You had the melting pot. And they were all Americans, okay?
Yep.
And particularly in Band of Brothers, you get that. You get, they use racial slurs against each other in a kind way, not in a cruel way. But they were talking about all these people from a different place, and they're all wearing the same uniform. And American Italians fought Italians. They did, okay? Yep. And as a matter of fact, taking Italy, which were huge losses on the American side. There were a lot of Italian Americans fighting other Italians. And in some cases, it's remarkable. A guy, where his mother came from, or grandmother came from a town, he said, I'm from this town. And they would try to say, where's Giuseppe? I'm, blah, 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 yelling and something. Oh, and then, they bonded again. But, that was an amazing thing in such a short amount of time to create such a strong national identity. It was remarkable, actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. That was it. And it created America at its height in the sort of the post-World War II era. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, Jenny, it's always good to see you, Jenny. Says Starmer's labor is not labor, it's Zionist labor. They ain't working for the people. No, I kind of agree with you. I think they're not working for the people. And then DJ 53144, thank you so much for your generosity. Really appreciate that. And then Cynthia has another question. Says, I find it odd that all countries whom the US has denounced as terror states, Iran and North Korea, aren't banned from the Olympics, whereas the US hasn't denounced Russia as a terror state yet it is banned from this event. All I can figure is the US doesn't want to be seen losing any Olympics medals to Russia, because it might cause the entire world to see the US as a weaker power than Russia. After all, athletic might often goes hand in hand with military might. It's kind of an interesting issue you raise, and I hadn't really thought of it in that way. The Russia thing is, I think it just goes back to the whole drugs thing. It goes back to the 2016. I mean, that in a way that laid the foundation for the ban on Russian athletes. So really from 2016, 2021, which was Japan, to now, essentially Russian athletes have been prevented from competing in the Olympics, even though no Russian is failed a drug test. I mean, it's like you're saying that they're doping, but the Russians haven't, they don't, it's not like you failed a drug test or anything. It's based on this ridiculous one person claiming that there is systematic state-sponsored systematic
a guy that
doping.
defends. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under protection. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, you know, who should be allowed to participate and who should not be. It just shows the whole farce of it all. I find it just totally disgusting, the whole thing. I'm going to really bother some people, but I don't think Israel should be banned. I don't think Russia should be banned. I don't think any country should be banned. Okay?
I agree.
It defeats the entire purpose of the exercise. Okay. I'm almost basically a purist on this. When you cross the threshold at the Olympics, there no politics whatsoever, and you have sportsmanlike behavior. Okay,
right.
When you leave and you want to go to the bar or parking lot, then that's your business. Okay, but there used to be the sanctity of the games, and that's been completely destroyed. And what the French did to it, I think the whole endeavor should just be collapsed. It is just such a horrendous presentation that they gave. It was just almost without words. Okay? But I mean, if you're gonna banning countries from participating in sports, for me is it defeats the entire purpose of excellence in sports. And now we don't even have excellence in sports because we have men beating up on women. Okay, so I knew this was gonna. Okay.
Yes, that's right. But I want to say about Cynthia's point about the Americans losing to Russia. The strongest example of that has never been quite anything like that was the 1972 Olympics in Munich.
I watched it live.
Me too, because there was a real embarrassment for the Americans, because the 100-meter dash has always been the event that the Americans dominated. And the Soviets had this guy, Valery Borzov. And the Americans kind of thought, we're not going to be able to beat him. And this is a real problem, because you just can't have a Soviet runner beating the Americans of this. This is the quintessential American event, the 100-meter dash. And so what happened was that the three American competitors overslept and missed the final. They overslept. Oh, damn, I should have put the alarm clock on. Damn, I put it on snooze, and they overslept. And so, of course, Borzov took the gold medal, and the Americans were not beaten. Hey, well, we just overslept. So it was a real embarrassment. And, of course, at that same games, they had the basketball between the United States and the USSR, and there was 1 second left. The U.S. was leading by 1 point, and the Soviet, boom, just threw the basket and went in, and the USSR took the gold medal. It was one of the most painful events ever for the Americans.
I can remember family, friends, school. That was a tough cross to bear.
Very tough.
That was everybody my age that watched that live remembers it to this day, like it was yesterday, and the pain. Okay. Yeah. It's one of those things that people say they remember. I mean, I was too young to remember when Kennedy was killed, but I do remember when the U.S. basketball team was defeated by the Soviet Union. That is something I remember. Okay. Yeah.
It was brutal.
I mean, if we'd had a Russiagate makeover, but the Soviets they drugged the American runners, so they
yeah.
Boris and Natasha did it. Yeah,
that's it. That's right. Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, that was it was very, very painful, and it was also the time that East Germany emerged as a real power.
They were always in the top three for
they rose to top three.
Time.
Yeah. They were top three in 1988. Should not be forgotten. In 1988, East Germany won more medals than the United States. The United States came third, because 1988 was really the last Olympics that both the United States and the Soviet Union competed. And then East Germany won more medals than than the United States. And that really was very, very.
How is Germany done since then?
Nothing. Exactly. It's total mediocrity. I mean, it was, I think, came sixth or seventh in the medal tally, which I think is disgraceful, incidentally. Germany, which is supposed to be, a sporting powerhouse, is really pretty mediocre now. Which, I have to feel that it reflects the mediocrity of
George. Did you watch the Olympics? Did you watch any of it?
I watched a little. I mainly only watched the track and field. I don't watch any of the other events. Okay. So the track and field.
The Olympics is like in the category of the Oscars for me now.
I agree. I agree. It is like the Oscars.
And what's happened too is it's been politicized. And what are the main stories? The scandals that come out. It's not athletic excellence.
No.
You remember Olga Korbut? I mean, the whole world was just in love with that little lady.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
she
right.
was perfect. Okay.
Yes. That was exactly. Everyone fell in love with.
And Nadia coming.
Nadia, but Nadia Comaneci, when she was Romanian, the point about Korbut was that because she was in the Soviet Union, but she was a charmer, and she charmed the audiences. And nobody had ever seen that, because people always assume these Soviet women are very dour. They're like Ninochka in that movie. They're very, very serious. They mouth the party slogans and whatever. And suddenly there was this adorable young girl. She was blowing kisses to the crowd, and everyone just fell in love with her.
Yeah, and she ended in a very sad way.
What happened to her?
Drug abuse, poverty. People used her, of course. Okay, so, and that was during the years of trouble in the 1990s.
Yeah. Right. Is she still alive?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
That's sad. DJ says it's simple. If you can't compete, then cheat. The American way. Yeah, I think you can't compete.
That's called the Democratic Party.
Jenny says, don't Yanks get a medal for overflying a combat zone? I guess I think that's right. I mean, these all these American generals, they all have this fruit salad on their chests. Worse than all the Soviet generals, when they just have so many medals, and the jacket wasn't big enough for them. But Americans are kind of like that as well. You get something, a medal for just about everything. So yeah, flying over a combat zone. Yep, you got your medal.
I don't know. Douglas McGregor mentions it. Everyone, or is it Larry Wilkerson? Is there was something? I'm going to make up numbers here, but the proportion will make sense. It was like 12 four-star generals during the Second World War. There's like 150 now. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is kind of. Yeah. Dan Rock says, odd how it's all about the far right in the UK, yet they support the far right in Ukraine and Argentina and Venezuela, and then say that these people, especially in Ukraine, are fighting for our values. No, I think that's right. I mean,
that's really smart. Yep, absolutely.
That's right. Exactly. Here are the far right that we like because they kill Russians. But here's a far right that we don't like because they think that government should be in the business of serving our own people. So yeah, that we like this far right, or that we don't like that far right. Exactly. DJ says crystal ball time. October surprise. King Biden abdicates. I think we've kind of agreed with that. I think that will be.
I don't watch everything, obviously, but George and we might have been the first or among the first to say that.
Right.
Olga Korbut is she?
Yeah, that's
alive?
what Jenny says. Olga Korbut is alive.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Well, she was in bad shape when she left. Then, okay.
Right. Well, she probably isn't, but she wouldn't be that old now. I mean, I would imagine she's probably about 70. I mean, she's not that old. Anyway, Jenny says a few fireworks and the average U.S. voter forgets about everything. preceding it. Yeah, I think that's.
Well, no, that's why we have the politics of the good vibe. That's what it's about. Okay. I mean, do you think this campaign is going to talk about issues? Really?
No. I think it's just going to be essentially it'll be a kind of a triumphant celebration of Harris.
A wonderful story. A wonderful story.
Right.
I was that little girl.
And Cynthia says, no doubt that Heels Up Harris is also deserving of the name Hideaway Harris. Oh, that's nice. That's well done. Heels Up.
Well, what's going on with this K-hive? I keep hearing that term, K-hive.
What is that? What is K-hive?
People are hiving around Kamala. It's like a beehive, okay? Which is very appropriate because, that's what's going on. The worker bee sends out the message and all the other worker bees get to work.
Yes, that's right. Then Jenny says, same as when Hillary laughs. We're talking about the cackling. Hillary laughs to hide a lie or cover her guilt. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're all familiar with with her laugh about we came, we saw, he died, and then she cackles. But remember also when the issue was about her server, and she was asked about, did you wipe your server? And then she says, oh, you mean with a cloth? And she sort of laughs, as pretending that she didn't really understand the question. Did you wipe your server? And then she laughs. So yeah, she laughs always her guilt.
But Hillary cackled when she lied.
Yes.
Kamala cackles when she doesn't know. And that's why she cackles a lot. Right.
I don't know whether you saw that little video clip, and where she's with, she's talking to an interview. I think she's being interviewed by Steve Jobs' wife, the widow, Steve Jobs' widow, and then she's saying, we need to be woke. We need to be more woke. We got to be wokest. And then she starts cackling. But just watch Jobs' widow's facial expression. She's kind of horrified by this performance of, we need to be woke. And so this is the person who's now being elevated as this fantastic figure. I mean, even Jobs' widow's face was just startled by such nonsense.
Speaking of which, I saw, it was a while back, everyone knows that Steve Jobs and what's his name over at Microsoft?
Gates's widow. Gates's ex-wife.
Yeah, but I mean,
Melinda Gates. Yeah,
there was an interesting debate with the two guys, and Steve Jobs was dying. It was quite obvious. He had a lot of weight loss, and he was giving this huge endowment to the New York Times to fact check. And I was just like, oh, that's your parting gift to the humanity, is to help
parting
out.
Gift to humanity. Yeah, that's right. That's it. Isn't that perfect? Just perfect. Just give it to the New York Times. Yeah.
Well, look at what they did with the money, George. I mean, they're bankrupt anyway. I mean, Washington.
That's right.
To use the last leg analogy.
But and of course, Jobs' widow, it bankrolls that horrible magazine, The Atlantic. Jobs for Jeffrey Goldberg and David Frum and the worst elements of humanity.
Just because you have money doesn't mean you're going to do good by it.
No, definitely not. Lynn, 1995, good to see you, says the Dems know how to paint lipstick on a pig. She's a puppet. Yeah, the Dems are very good at that. Very, very good. They're masters of this. And then Jenny says, wait, hold on. Yeah. No, all right, let me read. Dan Rock says, this is apropos. Korenetsia. This was the cultivating every other nationality except the Russian one. I think was the name of the Stalin process of nationalities. EU looks more and more like the Soviet Union. Yeah, EU hates European state. The goal is to have no visible difference in the population of the different states. Yeah, that's right. And then have everybody detesting everyone else. So that's the goal. So
Well,
you
see,
cultivate every single minor group, and then basically you don't have any more nations. You just have warring tribes.
well, I did a condensed presentation of nation building after the French Revolution of 1789. Essentially, what these people were, what we would call them serfs. Essentially, okay. There were variations, but that's what we're going back to. That they just want to create an entire union of serfs.
Right.
Okay. They want to erase all the hard work of nation building in Europe.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And you know, this happened to the United Kingdom. I mean, in my day, when I lived in the UK, I mean, it was the United Kingdom. Now you have, Scottish nationalism, run by this Muslim. I mean, it's like, he's the Scottish national leader, and he spends all his time denouncing white people. How much he hates all these white people. That's the leader of Scotland, denouncing white people. 95% of Scots are white, and he's denouncing white people. Now we should mention he's been come under attack from Elon Musk, and Elon Musk will be interviewing Trump today, so that might be quite an interesting interview.
Who's running Elon's companies?
It's a very good question. I don't get it. That's something I don't get.
I don't get it either. I don't get it either.
Those are big companies. I mean, big, organizations.
Well, I mean, Elon Musk is very much like Steve Jobs. I mean, Steve Jobs was involved in the revolution of computers, of music, of animation, distribution. I mean, Steve Jobs left a huge footprint, and Elon Musk too. I mean, he's heavily involved in a lot of it is government and off book stuff too. Okay, one day we're going to understand that dynamic. Okay, because I mean, he's very much at their mercy, but because what he does, they're dependent on him. It's a very weird relationship because it involves national security.
Yeah. But I have to say, though, that, whatever, for all his faults, thank God we have Musk. I mean,
at the end of the day, I mean, he gets a lot of shit
to Twitter.
He gets a lot of shit thrown at him, but at the end of the day, I'm glad he's around. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, because you remember what happened in, 2020 with Twitter. What was there? People just getting thrown off. And the fact that he kind of, allowed people back on, I think that had an impact on others on YouTube and so on. I mean, even though people are getting banned from YouTube, but it wasn't as bad as it was 2019, 2020, 2021. I mean, that was just horrific, that, everyone was getting censored. Jenny says, politicians have no clue. They live in high security gated communities. No, that's absolutely right. And then Dan Rock says, Israeli sportsmen in the Olympics are IDF soldiers. Maybe ban them as such, if not as athletes. So that's very, very good.
Well, I mean, they're certainly part of. I mean, they may not be full time, but I mean, every adult Israeli man, barring the ultra Orthodox, is in one way or another associated with the IDF.
Yes. Before we close, did you see the interview, the discussion between Norman Finkelstein and Benny Morris? It was on.
There was one a few months ago.
I think it was more recent than that. There was one more recent than that.
There was another rematch.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yeah.
I didn't see it, but Al Jazeera has a new series of debates, and Benny Morris was a guest, and he was eviscerated. It was.
But yeah, I mean, it's always Benny Morris. I think he treats Finkelstein with a great deal of condescension because of I think he feels that, hey, I'm a big university professor, and a famous scholar, and Norman Finkelstein isn't. So
but they're debating. That says everything.
I agree. I
That says
agree.
everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
everyone, I had contact with Norman Finkelstein like 20 years ago, okay, when no one else would talk to him, no one else. And I had him on, and he debated Benny Morris on my program, okay?
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah, and, you know, Norman, he's one of the very select group of people that have had their life's work at great cost to themselves actually pay off. I mean, he's an older man right now. He's lost a little bit of his vigor, just a little. But he's been vindicated, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really happy about that. It very rarely happens. The fact that Benny Morris, the establishment historian, which was interesting enough, he was the revisionist historian, George. That's how he made his name. Okay.
He made, that's right. Yeah. That it is that, and I think that was kind of what was interesting about this debate, because Finkelstein quoted Benny Morris's earlier work at him, and I think and Morris was a little uncomfortable because he was saying, and this was because they were all about Iran. It was about Iran.
Yeah.
And Finkelstein's point was that, you know, what Israel is doing to Iran, Israel was doing to Egypt in the 1950s and 60s. Basically, you just keep provoking and provoking and provoking until it'll reach a point at which you'll have to do something. And he says, hey, you know, I'm quoting here Benny Morris's book, Israel's Border Wars. You wrote about this, how, you know, Israel kept provoking and provoking and provoking Nasser until finally Israel got the war that he wanted, even though Nasser was resolutely trying to avoid a war. So the same thing with Iran. And what was interesting is that Morris goes, "Oh, you're misquoting my book," but he never.
Oh yeah, he always does that.
Explain in what ways he misquoting your book.
It's interesting is that Benny Morris, he actually, you know, he was like the first guy to say the Nakba actually happened. So, you know, everybody knew it happened, but he was the first one, an establishment said, hey, it happened. Okay. But what's interesting about Benny Morris, and I'm glad you brought up about border wars, is that he feels very confident. Israel is a small place. It's it has pluck. You know, it's in a very hostile region. And look how it's been able to maneuver itself, right. You know, and that's how he likes to do that, as kind of how a small country can use limited resources for maximum effect. And in theory, he's absolutely right. Okay, you don't look at regime type of Israel, just look at its how it manipulates its neighbors and region, and of course foreign patrons like the United States. But he falls completely on his face when it comes to Palestinians. He can't get away from that. And he's written so many things, including about the Nakba and Palestinians. And all you have to do is repeat back to him, this is what you do. Zionism, I'm paraphrasing here, Zionism is just a colonial settler project to get rid of the indigenous people. And he said this, or to that effect, over and over again, and you just throw it at him. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it at all. Particularly, I mean, when the debate I saw was in an auditorium in London. I mean, he would start saying things, and people would just, I mean, laugh in his face, or boo, or just like, just out of outrage. It's like, how can you even say something like that? Okay, I give him kudos for doing these interviews. He never comes out well. He doesn't come out well. He keeps trying.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's but they're kind of very interesting, and it's I mean, the Piers Morgan format, I think they're a little short, and one would like to have a longer time. They could actually get into some of these issues. Otherwise, so much time is taken up by kind of.
Yeah, well, it feels
back and forth. But I think a longer debate, I think, would be much better.
Piers Morgan doesn't have the depth.
He doesn't.
That's why he brings on so many guests, and he brings on these really frivolous people. I mean, when Aaron Mate was on, which I thought Aaron acquitted himself very well, But he had these two Israeli propagandists. You remember Al Shifa Hospital, this IDF soldier that was showing he was on Piers Morgan, and Aaron didn't realize that it was the same guy at the same time. Okay. And afterwards he just kicked himself saying, I didn't know it was the same guy. Okay. Because it was. And so what that does is it creates this artificial tension, sick Aaron, go sick him. Okay. And these two guys go back and bite him. Okay. It's not much is accomplished.
No, I think it's right.
It's very trying.
Yeah, but he gets these people on because he does have a very big audience, and so that's why a lot of people come on his shows, because of the exposure. But that was in sometimes they're pretty good debates. But he himself, he's just. Ultimately, he's just a tabloid journalist. He started as a tabloid journalist, and that's
a good one at it.
Mentality is that of a tabloid journalist.
He does it well. Give him credit for doing what he's a tabloid journalist, and he does it really well. He's very accomplished.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're kind of done sterling work here, yeoman work. So thank you everybody who have joined us. Thank you above all to those who have contributed very generously. Really appreciate that. And naturally, these hounds, these ferocious hounds, they're not even bothering to show up.
He just wants to play.
Yeah, but so I'm not interested in this. This just isn't good enough. It's not of a high enough standard for me. Anyway, thank you everybody who joined us. We will be back next Monday at the same time. Hope you'll be with us then. Have a great week. See you next Monday. All the best. Bye-bye.